Good morning. This video is the release of it's the second of the 7 precepts of a healing life. Also this foundation, the precepts of my healing rite of passage services. So release. Easier said than done, right? Release resistance. A couple years ago, I created a 30-day group program called Release Resistance, and it was so very powerful that it sort of was the launching pad for all of this. And so in some ways, I'm more attached, which will be interesting in a minute. I'm much more attached to release than any of the other precepts because it's imperative. So is connection. Actually, all the precepts are imperative, but release was probably one of the most challenging, only because I couldn't understand how to do it. I knew how important it was. I knew I wanted to do it. I just didn't know how, so it took me a little while to figure that out. And when I did, I created the Release Resistance program and saw that it was just as powerful for everybody else. So the key to releasing resistance, and resistance shows up like a whole lot of things, right? Anxiety, fear of missing out, fear in general, being afraid, which isn't always the same thing as fear, anger, hurt, disappointment. These are all signs of resistance. And resistance is a sign of attachment. You can't resist anything unless you're attached to something else. Kind of think of it like when we were little and we used to climb on the monkey bars, you know, overhead, 1, 2, 3, 4. And resistance to moving to the next one would be indicated by the inability to let go of this one. So you just stand in the same place the whole time, right? The only way to get here is to let go of here, right? Yeah. So, and you can use that analogy for swimming. You can use the swimming analogy, right? Backstroke or freestyle. It always has to keep going, one after the other, and you're not resisting, right? You're going with the flow. So what happens when we're in resistance is we're not trusting the flow. We're not understanding that this is our path, and this is the next step. I really hesitate, but I'm pretty sure that we need to go exactly in the direction of all of our resistance, because you don't resist anything that doesn't have value. Right? Well, you know, because some people say, well, you know, I would never want to rob a bank. Is that me, I'm just resisting that, so I should just go ahead and rob a bank? Not my favorite people to talk to, but it happens. And that's not resistance, right? That's a choice. That's a choice. It's not something that you would like to do, but you're choosing, but you're afraid to do it, or you're anxious about doing it. It's not something that could be for your highest good and you're not following it. It's something that everything about you says is not you. This doesn't resonate with me. That's not resistance. Dissonance, or staying in dissonance would be resistance, right? This is uncomfortable, but it's familiar, so I'm going to stay here. That's resistance to whatever's next. So the fact that something doesn't resonate with you is the greatest indicator that that's not the path for you. But something that resonates with you, but you hesitate to do it, or you talk yourself out of it, that's what we're talking about. That's resistance. And that's the path that you really need to follow. Notice how many times in your life you've said, oh my gosh, I would never do such and such. I would, and something, I would never get a divorce, right? How many people, I would never get divorced. And sure as shit, something comes along that makes divorce the most resonant path for you. It's just interesting to me that almost everything I've said I would never do, I do. Somewhere down the line, and it takes a really good memory, because sometimes these things happen 10 years later. I would never, move and leave Indiana. Hello, Michigan. I would never date someone more than 10 years older than myself. Hello, married to my new husband. I would never da-da-da-da-da. And it happens over and over and over again. And I feel like that sometimes the word never is our soul peeking through to our consciousness, and our consciousness saying, get back there. I don't want to go yet. And that's okay. I mean, sometimes I think it's just a heads up. Just be prepared the next time you say never, that there might come a time, there might be situations that will change your mind. And let that be great, right? Let that be awesome. Then you could learn something, right? So the next time never comes out of your mouth, you're like, I better be prepared for perhaps. I would perhaps never. But releasing resistance is releasing the attachments to the past and the way the past occurred, the future and the way we think it's supposed to occur, as well as the present and the fact that it's occurring, right? Because the present is one 24 hours, correct? It's like, technically it's 1/10 of a second, because then it's the next, and then it's the next, and then it's the next. So the present easily enough becomes the past. But so if we can remember that, to not have attachment to the outcome of things, attachment and not having attachment was another thing that was hard for me to grasp, which is probably why releasing resistance was a little bit hard to concept to grasp too, because I thought, well, I like my attachments. I enjoy being attached to people, connection. I enjoy being attached to things, connection, because things can be symbolic of our connection to people or to life. Right? Because I have crystals that I'm very attached to, and that's because they connect me to the energy of the earth, which I'm extremely attached to and don't really wish to give that up right now. So it's the attachment we have to look at, not the attachment in the present, but the attachment to the outcome. Okay? I'm not attached to this. I'm attached to this thing because it brings me joy right now. That's a great attachment. That's great attachment. The attachment that doesn't serve you is the one that gets in the way of your joy. So when you're forever grieving over things or people that you lost, that attachment, that's not a healthy attachment. That's an attachment to an outcome. It should have gone differently. I should not be here without them or without it. Same thing with the future. It's great to have plans. I grew up in an era where people planned to be married before 30. So when 30 came and went and they were not in a significant relationship, much less married, then there was really deep depression around that. That was an attachment to an outcome, right? I want to be married, but I'm okay the way I am now. That would be a good attachment. I'm okay with the way things are now, but I would like to be married. I would like to have a partner. That's a good goal to have without an attachment to the outcome. And certainly not with a deadline of by 30, by 25, by 40 even. So releasing attachments is super important. It's a super important precept to healing your life. And you can't really do it. You can't really heal your life or even the past the future unless you give up that attachment, unless you can release that attachment and find your way past resistance. You know, the resistance shows up with, I'm attached to where I am now. I don't want to grow. I don't want to go anywhere else. I want to stay right here. Attachment to the outcome. I want things to stay the way they are. Things cannot ever stay the way they are. Everything is moving. It's energy in motion. A body in motion stays in motion. Here's the kicker. Everything stays in motion. Even when it looks like it's stagnant, it's in motion. The fact that it's feels stagnant is an illusion. It's a dam. There's your analogy. So we have these rivers, right? The river flows. The river doesn't stop flowing unless it dries up. That's a whole other analogy. But the river flows and flows. We can build a dam and it will build up, but it doesn't stop moving, right? The very act of putting up the dam to stop it does not stop it, because if it stopped it, then the water would not rise, right? We absolutely know it keeps flowing because the water rises, and then the dam allows some to flow so that it doesn't overflow and stuff like that. But that dams do not serve you in your energy, in your life. Dams do not. It feels like stagnation, but it's not, because there's this whole backup happening, because the life energy is still flowing. So resistance, my friends, is futile. Futile. You might as well just let go of the control, because that's really what the resistance and the attachment is. I'm attached to this outcome, and I'm going to control that flow to get to that outcome. And when I don't get that outcome, then I'm disappointed and I'm upset, because I was attached to the outcome I had no right to have. No right to have those expectations, because it's not like a gun, right? Where you load it and you set your sights and you shoot at the target. You reasonably expect to hit the target. Maybe not the bullseye, but you reasonably expect to hit the paper. Life's not like that. Life's like a magic bullet, right? We shoot it off in this direction, and it might go over here, and it might go over there, might come around. You never know where it's going to land, because it's not about the destination. It's about the journey. I mean, if you think about it, where do we land? In the physical realm, we land on a deathbed. We all land on a deathbed. Whether that's a heart attack on the golf course at 45, or it's warm in our beds at 89. It's still the same thing. That's all the destination. So then all that's left has to be the journey, right? And if you have a journey full of resistance, that's not a fun journey. It's not a fun journey at all. So we have to release our attachments. And learning to do that is tricky, but it's what we cover here in the Healing Rite of Passage. Releasing that resistance, learning how to have attachments, but not attachments to outcomes. Maybe I should say learning to have expectations, but not attachments to outcomes. You know, a lot of the people I talk to, their suffering lies in the past. Well, you don't understand, Jade. I had this happen to me. You know, my uncle molested me over and over and over again. I do understand. I understand that he's still molesting you if you still identify as that victim. I understand that he's stealing your future because all you can see is that you are a victim of his. Rather than understanding that that was one thing that happened, maybe time and time again, but you survived it. You survived it, and now it's your opportunity to do more than survive. It's your responsibility to do more than survive. It's your responsibility to take that and understand that no matter how hard they tried, they didn't break you. Even when it felt like they did, you weren't broken. And use that to break open. You just have to release your attachment. to expecting that it should have happened differently. And I'll leave that there.